if your preparer is insisting on paper filing a current year return, make sure that you understand why. What I have seen is people that do not have any business doing taxes will paper file because it kind of buys them time to disappear. Okay. And if you were having a situation with your taxes where something was done incorrectly, not that you owe, because if you owe, that's on you. You need to adjust your withholding. So go check out my YouTube video on that and I'll walk you through it. But if something was done incorrectly, like deductions you shouldn't have taken or credit, something like that, you need to be able to go back to the tax professional. So we need that return e-filed so that you know immediately whether or not it was accepted, rejected. The IRS can go ahead and start sending you letters to know what was wrong. You can contact that professional.
Welcome to the Tax Relief with Timalyn Bowens podcast. Are you behind on taxes? Is the IRS threatening you or your business? Are you overwhelmed and confused about how to resolve your tax issues? Let's join Timalyn as she explains your options and how she may be able to help. Timalyn Bowens is America's favorite EA.
Hey, family. This is America's favorite EA, Timalyn Bowens, your favorite EA. And I am genuinely excited today to be doing episode 16. Today's topic is one that I've been wanting to do on the podcast, but then I put out a poll, and from your responses, you also wanted me to do it. That's always amazing when that happens. So today, I'm going to cover how to choose a tax professional. Now, before we get into this, I have two disclaimers, okay? For those of you that have been following the podcast, you don't miss an episode, you probably noticed things were a little bit different. Listening right now, you probably also noticed things are a little bit different. I've had some things going on where I haven't been able to go to the podcast studio. So the sound quality might be a little different. I appreciate you sticking it out with me. I look forward to getting back in the studio to do 17 of the rest of these episodes. But for right now, I'm working with what I got, right? Just like I tell you all, you gotta keep going. You can't stop. So that is disclaimer number one. The audio is different because I'm not actually in the podcast studio. Disclaimer number two, this episode is absolutely 100% for you. It is not a plug for me. Because guess what? This upcoming tax season, if you don't need tax relief in the form of owing the IRS $100,000 and you can't pay today, we aren't even going to be a good fit to work with each other because I'm not even taking on new tax preparation clients. So again, this is strictly for you, not a plug for me. It just aligns with my mission to fill the tax literacy gap one taxpayer at a time. All right. So you can let your guard down. I don't have a sales pitch for you, but I do still have a call to action. Because taxes keep getting more and more complicated, please do me a favor and send this to family and friends that you know that may be in search of a tax professional. Okay? So this episode is still going to only be 15 minutes. I want to get right into it. Now, if you've listened before, you already know this is where I say go get your pen and paper. But in all seriousness, you probably do need a pen and paper for this episode because of the information that I'm going to be sharing with you. If you can remember it all, that's awesome. But most likely you won't be able to. So you'll want to grab that pen and paper. So the first tip that I have for choosing a tax professional right now is November. If you are going to be going with a new tax professional in the spring, you need to be doing your shopping right now. Yes, before you go finish your Christmas shopping. The reason being, when we get to January, February, any good and established taxpayer is already in the process of getting things going with their current clients. They're probably not even going to have availability to get you in um, right in January or February. So while you are looking at the things that I share with you today, go ahead, go out there on the internet. I'm going to give you things that you should be looking for so you can go ahead and reach out to those accounting firms and tax professionals now. So the number one thing, and I'm laughing to keep from crying and being angry because I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but there are so many scam artists, okay, and people that have absolutely no business doing tax returns that are out there right now, okay, positioning themselves as experts, and they don't even have what is called a P10. So, number one, make sure that the tax professional has a P10 and that they sign the return. A P10 is a Prepare Tax Identification Number. You've probably heard me mention this before. It is like the equivalent of, let's say, a social security number, okay? Every tax preparer, any person who is preparing a tax return for monetary compensation is required by the Internal Revenue Service to have a P10. I can't tell you in my practice, and I literally can't because I haven't gone through and counted how many clients I have that went to somebody that prepared their return. But when I look at the bottom of the second page, it says self-prepared and there's no P10. So it would be like if Johnny went to a tax professional, quote unquote, air quotes. Forgot you guys can't see me this episode. So Johnny goes to this tax professional, they do the return, and then they put Johnny's name at the bottom, say that he prepared it himself, and then don't put their information. This is a serious red flag, okay? Because with the P10, what the IRS can do, they can track how many returns a person has done. They can track the continuing education, so making sure that the tax professional is up to date. So if they are not signing it, I don't know about you, but I love what I do. If it is not up to par, or if I think something's sketchy on it, I let my clients know, like, hey, I'm not signing off on this. You need to have somebody else sign off because I don't agree with it. So if you're paying someone and they refuse to sign it, again, huge red flag. Now, the IRS will kind of help you out with this because if you go to irs.gov, they do have an IRS directory of preparers, which this is not a complete list of tax return preparers, but it does include those who are enrolled agents, CPAs, attorneys, as well as those that participate in the annual filing season program. Now, I'll get to that a little bit later, but along with that directory, they also have what's called the P10 directory. If you can't find the preparer you're interested in using in the P10 directory, that means they have no business doing tax returns and you should not be paying them. Don't even entertain going to them to prepare your taxes, okay? But back to the IRS directory of preparers. Yes, there will be people that don't have credentials, but you need to make sure that you do check credentials. So let me go over them very briefly. First of all, if you're listening to America's Favorite EA, I want to assume that you know what an enrolled agent is, but I know you may have just joined, so maybe you didn't listen to episode 1 where I go into detail about what an enrolled agent is. So just very briefly, an enrolled agent, such as myself, we have the highest license that the IRS gives to a tax professional, right? So I'm authorized to do tax planning, tax preparation, advising, but most importantly, tax representation in all 50 states. So that means if you have a tax problem, I come step in your shoes and then I go speak to the IRS on your behalf so you don't have to. Only 3 credentialed professionals can do this: tax attorneys and CPAs. So, of course, attorneys are licensed by their bar, and then CPAs are licensed by the state. So, what's the difference? With an enrolled agent, everything that we do is focused on tax. Not all EAs do tax preparation. Not all EAs do representation. So this is something that you should look at the potential professional that you want to use. Look on their website, see if they specialize in representation or preparation. Same with a CPA. CPA is licensed through the state, which means they may not actually even do taxes at all. But due to the money from lobbying and all of that, that is the credential that most people recognize. And by default, people trust and go to with their taxes when that's not always best case scenario, because I can tell you the number of times that I've had clients come to me for me to fix a tax issue where they went to a CPA. CPA really didn't have any business doing taxes either, but because they had those initials behind their name, people trusted them to do taxes. So another question you can ask the CPA, like, hey, do you specialize in doing taxes? Because they are licensed through the state, maybe they would be an awesome resource for your state and local issues. So I'm not saying that CPAs, oh my goodness, they can't do taxes. I'm saying all CPAs don't do taxes. So that's something to ask before you just assume that they do. Now, if it's a CPA and you do not see them in the P10 directory, they shouldn't be doing taxes anyway. Attorney, some of them do taxes. Again, look at the P10 directory to see if they're there. But usually a tax attorney comes into play when you are in a criminal situation with concerning your taxes, but they also will represent you in the same way that I mentioned earlier before the IRS if they specialize in tax representation. Now, a lot of people aren't familiar with the annual filing season program if you're not in the tax world. Believe it or not, there was a time when the IRS wanted to regulate all tax professionals. And I believe that would be amazing. But a few years ago, and I can't remember the exact year, it's been since I've been in this profession, and my first season was in 2011. The IRS put something out where they were going to regulate all tax professionals, which would mean you had to have a certain amount of continuing education, you had to have updates. That sounds like a wonderful idea, right? Well, guess what? People pushed against that, and the IRS actually lost that case. And I tell you, for taxpayers like you and trusting professionals, that was one of the worst things that could have happened, because then anybody can get a P10 and call themselves a tax professional, but the IRS cannot enforce them actually taking continuing education, things like that. So I hope something comes about where they can regulate it more, but as of right now, they cannot. So the annual filing season program is for tax professionals that do not have the attorney, CPA, or enrolled agent credentials, but they want to show their clients in the tax world that they have done their due diligence to actually do continuing education on tax law updates and ethics, things of that nature. So with CPAs, they're required each year to get a certain number of CPE, okay, continuing professional education. It doesn't always have to be about tax, because remember I said they are not required to do tax returns. They don't have Just because they're a CPA doesn't mean they do taxes. For enrolled agents, I am required to get a certain number of CE credits every year. I have to have a certain amount of ethics. I have to have a certain amount of federal tax law updates. And because I'm a member of an organization, the National Association of Enrolled Agents, NAEA, I'm required to get even more than what the IRS says I have to get. So these are also things to be aware of when you're looking at credentials. Just because somebody's not an EA or CPA, they may still be a good fit for you if they've participated in the annual filing season program. Okay. But I don't want you to get so caught up on credentials that you forget about experience. Okay. Because if we look in the work world, experience often will trump a degree. But when we have them together, we have total domination, right? If we can work together. When I first started my career in 2011, two of the most brilliant minds that I knew and yet know in the tax world had not passed the CPA exam yet. Now, I believe, if I remember correctly, they both had like 10 and 11 years of tax experience. One was a direct mentor to me. The other, I had the opportunity to work on projects with. Like I said, they were both brilliant. They worked on some of our best clients. They had people skills. I learned about international tax law. I learned about AMT taxes, some of the most complicated, um, the most complex and complicated tax situations these two taught me. But at the time, they weren't CPAs. Now, they both passed the CPA exam since then. But the reason I'm telling you this story, just because a person isn't a CPA or an EA, doesn't mean that they don't know what they're doing. All right. So, another thing you want to be mindful of is, what is this tax professional niched down to? Okay. Because here's the thing. Let's say that, I was trying to think of an industry here. Let's say I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. So let's talk about Humana. All right. Let's say that you are wanting to build an insurance business, and this person worked within the accounting department in Humana. They're not a CPA. They have 25 years of experience working within Humana. Now, I think I would ask why they weren't credentialed. You may ask why they aren't credentialed, but their experience is going to be more valuable than a person who just passed the CPA exam 2 years ago. Okay. You have to remember, when you're shopping, yes, do your due diligence, but credentials aren't necessarily an end all be all. All right. Now, you can check to make sure they actually are a CPA if you're looking at credentials at cpaverify.org. It might be .com, but it's CPA Verify. If you Google it, it'll pop up. You can check the credentials of tax professionals on the IRS directory of preparers. People are allowed to opt out of that. However, if they have a P10, they will be in the P10 directory. As you're shopping, I want you to be careful, okay? Because as I say many times, and people laugh, yes, this is for you. It's to fill the tax literacy gap, one taxpayer at a time. But I truly don't want you to become my client later because of negligence that took place right now. Okay. I don't want all of these tax problems to have a ripple effect. And now you're in deep with the IRS and you can't seem to find your way out. Okay. Another red flag, make sure that the preparer is e-filing. That is a huge red flag. We are in 2022, about to go into 2023. The e-file system, yes, does have its quirks. I have a client right now that the system keeps saying that they're deceased. They're not verified with the Social Security Office and the IRS. E-file system is just down. But what you may not know is that when a tax professional prepares so many returns, it may be 10, the IRS requires them to e-file everything. Now, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but we're still kind of in a pandemic. If a return is paper filed, it will take a long time to process. If your preparer is insisting on paper filing a current year return, make sure that you understand why and that there is no reason, or that there is a reason, not no reason, there's a reason why it can't be e-filed. What I have seen is people that do not have any business doing taxes will paper file because it kind of buys them time to disappear. Okay. And if you were having a situation with your taxes where something was done incorrectly, not that you owe, because if you owe, that's on you. You need to adjust your withholding. So go check out my YouTube video on that and I'll walk you through it. But if something was done incorrectly, like deductions you shouldn't have taken or credit, something like that, you need to be able to go back to the tax professional. So we need that return e-filed so that you know immediately whether or not it was accepted, rejected. The IRS can go ahead and start sending you letters to know what was wrong. You can contact that professional. Okay. So most definitely the P10, check them out in the P10 directory, check out their credentials, but in the same breath of checking credentials, make sure that you remember that credentials don't mean everything. Experience also does. If they have the experience plus the credentials, you are probably winning. If they're niched down to doing what you need, all right? And you can also check the IRS directory of preparers. Now, if you have any questions about this episode, please feel free to reach out with those questions, concerns at the contact us page on the America's Favorite EA website. That is going to be in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for sharing this episode because I know you will. And thank you so much for being a part of helping me to fill the tax literacy gap, one taxpayer at a time.
I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen today. I'd like to thank Jim Ray Consulting Services for helping me get this message out to you. I hope you found the information helpful. Did you know 1 in 50 people have a tax problem? Please share this episode with your friends and family because you never know who may need help. Again, thanks for listening. Hey, just as a reminder, this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It provides a framework and possible solutions for solving your tax problems, but it is not legally binding. Please consult your tax professional regarding your specific tax situation.